Go ahead, Sarah.
Hello, Texans. We invite you to join the Texas affiliates of the National Alliance on Mental Illness for our National Day of Hope.
On World Mental Health Day, October 10th, NAMI affiliates from across Texas are celebrating a National Day of Hope through NAMI Walks events.
This year, we're adapting our mental health walks for the virtual world and calling them NAMI Walks Your Way.
As always, NAMI Walks Across Texas spreads mental health awareness, provides a positive platform for powerful conversations, and raises funds for mental health programming in our communities.
We hope you join us as an ally on World Mental Health Day. The need for resources and support have never been greater.
NAMI Walks Your Way is exactly how it sounds.
We want Texans to do NAMI Walks their way.
Whether it's going out for a walk on October 10th or doing something else.
Like going for a ride with your neighbors, enjoying some ball play, frisbees, juggling, walking your dog, or having a nice walk with your neighbors. Anything to spread awareness about mental health.
We encourage participants to share pictures, videos, and their stories on social media using the hashtag of the NAMI Walk that you join. Let your community and the entire state of Texas know that you are doing NAMI Walks your way.
All Texans are invited to a National Day of Hope, October 10th. Please participate and donate if you can. To find a virtual NAMI Walks, visit namiwalks.org.
So welcome to our Vote for Mental Health Forum. I'm Jane Malin. I'm the president of the board of NAMI Greater Houston. And I'm so glad that you're here and participating in our forum. We have folks from all over the area interested, especially in these districts, and very interested in what you have to say about our needs in mental health. NAMI is the largest grassroots volunteer organization in the nation. We provide many free services, support groups, and education, as well as advocacy. And so the Public Policy and Advocacy Committee has arranged this for you all, and we're very eager to hear from you. We cover Harris County, Fort Bend County, and Montgomery County. We have many, many members and friends. So tonight, our moderator is Dr. Brenda LeVar. She is the vice president of NAMI Greater Houston and is a longtime NAMI leader, both in Florida and Washington, as well as here. So, Brenda, take it away.
All right. Well, we welcome all of you to our evening, just as we call it. We call it a dialogue because we hope we will really get a chance to talk about all of the issues that are confronting us at this point. We're hoping that you who've joined us really do see a need, and I'm sure you do because you decided to join us to see the need that we have in mental health. So we have 3 districts represented. We have District 133, Sandra Moore is with us. We have District 134, Ann Johnson is with us. And we have District 137, Jean Wu. So welcome to each of you. And what we will do in the very beginning is just kind of lay out some things. You will have about 2 minutes at the very beginning to tell us about you, about your district, or anything else you want us to know, especially about your interest and your ideas about mental health. Following that, we will have a number of questions that we will have. People are able to send us questions in the chat box, and so some of those may come up. We will try to keep it so that we get kind of an even time for each of you as we go through this. At the end of our questioning time and talking, and we'll allow you to kind of spend some time responding to each other as well. But at the end, you will have about a minute or maybe two, depending on how much time we have left, to close it out and talk to us about your experience this evening and what kinds of things you're hoping to do in the future. So at the end of this, then we'll close it out, and we are more than happy, since we're streaming Facebook Live, to have any questions that you want us to follow up on. We will certainly do that. In the beginning, though, we just want to talk a little. This is a very interesting time, to say the least. And so we're hoping that I won't have to spend any time. The good thing about Zoom is we can always mute the mic. Maybe we need to do that for other debates. But at any rate, what we're facing in Texas is a time when, I guess by the best estimates, we will have in this next biennium a $4.6 billion budget shortfall. Part of that, of course, is that they're already making decisions about what will be removed from HHSC, and of course, what will be removed from services. In addition to that, this is the last year of the 1115 waiver, which will impact mental health services about to the tune of $333 million a year. So it's a substantial loss that we are facing. And we know that there is at this point an idea that maybe we could get an extension for a year, but still we will be facing both the shortfall that will come from property taxes. And I have to tell you, those numbers are very, very scary. So we would like to hear from each of you, your opening statement, and then I will go into questions. So thank you so much. And we're going to begin with Sandra Moore. Oh, I should say that for those of you that are already responded to NAMI Texas request, we have obtained your answers. So we may go back and forth on some of that too. So let's begin with House District 133, Sandra Moore.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Houston since 1987. And I've written a book, The Adult ADHD Handbook, What You and Your Family Need to Know. And the other book is Women in Personal Power, The Ways It's Been Taken From Us and How We Can Get It Back. I think that pertains to NAMI. I have referred many people with mood disorders to NAMI to go to meetings, to figure out how to cope with this diagnosis that, in my opinion, professional, absolutely requires medication. And I have encouraged people who are extremely hampered workways to get evaluated by the Department of Assistive and Rehabilitative Services. And that also includes people with ADHD. So I'm quite familiar with NAMI. I've had clients who moved into NAMI's housing. It saved them, it gave them independence. NAMI is a great organization for which I have tremendous respect and support. I would like to do everything I can. I look forward to answering these questions. I think that because Texas has such low funding for mental health, that COVID in particular has really amplified the inequity. And I think if Democrats take the House, we have to form a phalanx to prevent decreases in funding and take it from other areas like the border, which is federal, and we don't have to do the border. And that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Sandra. And now, Ms. Johnson, Ann Johnson, please.
Thank you so much, Brenda. I am absolutely honored to be here with all of you, and I thank you for the invitation to talk about the importance of mental health and how I see it being played out in our election cycle in November. So my name is Ann Johnson. I grew up here in Houston. I'm your former chief human trafficking prosecutor, but before that, I actually worked in our juvenile courts and was one of the first defense attorneys assigned to our juvenile mental health court. I saw that juvenile mental health court was a great alternative program because just like you all recognize, mental health issues often start in those teenage years where we have a chance to not only combat the issue and address it, but we also recognize, as you do, that about 70% of those in our juvenile courts are facing mental health issues. So that program was spot on and the right thing to do, not only to help the individual client, but oftentimes to help the family and support unit with those wraparound services. To me, it was not only the right thing to do in human terms, but it was the right thing to do because it was going to lead to a reduction in recidivism long-term for us as a community. I was in those mental health courts in 2011 when our budgets were slashed. And I remember getting that flyer from our current state representative who said, "Congratulations, I'm your state rep and I cut your budget." And I could see all the faces of the kids that I knew were going to be impacted by those cuts. We have followed up this year or this decade with the same partisan rejection of Medicaid expansion, which is a significant need when we want to deal with our mental health population. And so many people have referred to this decade as the lost decade on education and health. And so I see us at a tipping point, but it is also a scary moment, just as Brenda recognized, that we are in a down budget, in part because of those same failed policies around our Texas commitment, that even though we have been an economically strong state, we have failed to invest in the most vulnerable among us. I work in your criminal court system today, and our Harris County Jail is the state's largest mental health facility. That is wrong. And I believe that we can change and treat this population of need and vulnerability with the dignity that they are deserving. And it starts with forums like this. So I thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you and to be an advocate for this population in our Texas legislature in January of 2021.
Thank you so much. Okay, Representative Wu.
Hi, everybody. My name is Gene Wu, and I am the state representative for House District 137. I was elected first in 2012. I'm serving the end of my 4th term, and I'm running for re-election for my 5th term this November. And I'm going to join with Ann and with Sarah, and basically say that we can do better for this state. We can do much better for the way we treat some of our most vulnerable populations. And, you know, my day job is to be an attorney, and just like Ann, I represent young people, both in the CPS system and in the juvenile delinquency system. And there are a few things that unite both systems. One is drug addiction, and the other is mental health. And those two things, and often overlap, drive so much of the pain and suffering that is in our state, and so much of the financial costs in our state. And what I've been saying is we can stop doing it the stupid way. We don't have to do it the stupid way of spending money at the back end, of spending money to deal with the symptoms instead of helping fix the actual problems. And so what I'm here to say, what I've been saying for my entire political career, what I will join Ann and Sandra in saying is we can do this a better way. We don't have to do it the stupid way. And what I really want to push out the idea is we can do much more preventative care. We can do much more therapy. Jail is not the answer. Prison is not the answer. We have such amazing doctors and therapists and nurses and counselors that we don't have to use the brutality of the criminal justice system to deal with a lot of the problems we have. We can save money and treat people like human beings all at the same time.
All right, thank you. Now we'll start with the questions. I think I want to go back to something I said earlier about what we know will be the deficit this time. We also are aware that HHSC has already begun directing certain budget cuts. So the question is for each of you, how do we expand what we have coming in order to meet it? I think you've kind of gone around the edges of it, but maybe you have some very specific things that you would see as appropriate ways of changing this process, because you're coming in, the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the Lieutenant Governor at this point have the ability to make changes because you're like a part-time legislature. So the question is, where do you see your role in moving forward in this process of ensuring that we don't go back to 2011 with the same level of budget cuts? And I want to start with you, Representative Wu, and then we'll move back to everyone else. I think you're muted. There you are. I think we got you now. You're still muted. I don't know what's happening.
Brenda, you might want to move to a different candidate. I think he's bumped off the system.
He's there.
But he'll be back.
He's there. Right
I'm there. Sorry about that.
Hey, great.
My Zoom is doing funny things, so.
Yes.
Apologies. So a few things. Number one, I want everyone to have this idea that, first of all, budget is policy. And I cannot emphasize that enough, because a lot of times we talk about what bills did we pass, what laws did we change. Those things matter, but in reality, they don't matter anywhere as much as what the actual budget is. Because I cannot tell you the number of times that I've had, like freshman legislators who come up to me and say, hey, we passed the bill, and to do this X, Y, and Z. And I said, like, well, did you have any money in the budget for it? And the answer was, well, no. Well, then you didn't pass anything. You didn't do anything, because budget is policy. And this is what I want to focus on, because I'm an appropriator. I sit on the budget appropriations committee. I work on the budget.
Yes.
And I'm telling you that, if you really want to make change, the change has to happen in the budget. And a lot of times we have people who work on legislation, who pass bills, who say, look, we did this great thing for mental health. You didn't do anything. They didn't do anything. It's all for show, because it's not in the budget, and it's not, and that's what actually changes things. And I will commit, and just as almost every single Democrat that's running on the ballot now will commit to working towards a more equitable stance for all Texans by passing Medicaid expansion, by increasing preventative care funding, by working on mental health issues. These are all really important things, and they cannot be separated from the actual policies. The budget is key.
And I think that's important, because that's really the only thing that legislators have to do. The only thing you have to do. You don't have to pass any bills. You don't have to do anything else. You just have to pass the budget. So I'm glad that you made that point. So, okay, Ms. Johnson, could you kind of weigh in on your thoughts at this point?
Absolutely. So I agree with Representative Wu. And one of the first things that we can do if Democrats take the Texas House, and I am a Democrat running against a Republican incumbent, and our goal in having some balance against the extreme Republican partisanship that we have seen over this decade, that has caused our state to reject Medicaid expansion. We are one of now just 11 states that have refused Medicaid expansion, and that has meant rejecting $100 billion to our state and Medicaid expansion, which would have been a significant benefit to our mental health community. And so we talked earlier in the introduction about the fact that I live in a world where I work in our criminal justice system and see the impact of that failed policy decision that often pushes our mental health population wrongfully into the criminal justice system. And so Representative Wu is absolutely right. When we break from this partisanship, expand Medicaid, then we start not only being able to provide the resources that could come in through those systems, but we start putting ourselves in a better financial position in the budget. And Brenda, you mentioned it. For those of us that get elected or are there in January of 2021, we are stuck with the policy and budget decisions that the Republicans have made in Texas to such an extent that they have always bragged about how great of an economy that we have in Texas, yet we have not invested in the most vulnerable of either our infrastructure or our people. And we have seen where the Republican-led legislature has continually passed corporate benefits to a detriment of our Texas citizens. For example, a provision called Chapter 313 provisions, which give a kickback to an incentive on bringing technology jobs to Texas. The problem is the studies show that 85% of those kickbacks were not needed because people were gonna frack and do oil and gas in Texas regardless. All we've done is reject the tax flow that would have been necessary to shoring us up so that we did have robust rainy day funds. Instead, Republicans have kept us at virtually a deficit, constantly draining rainy day funds to pay their past bills. And so here we are in this moment of crisis in COVID-19, and they were not prepared for it. And so I do not trust them to go into this moment of crisis to make these same policy decisions where we've already seen that they've given us a lost decade of education and health. And so yes, we need more sound decisions that truly invest in and protects the most vulnerable Texans. And my commitment is to do just that.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Moore, can you?
Yes. So, of course, I want to expand Medicaid because I have clients who are poor and I see them for almost nothing. And the problem is I'm thinking of somebody who was suicidal and it was taking ages to get in to their community health through the ACA. And one of the problems is that not only do we need to expand Medicaid to the working poor, but we also need a state-managed health insurance marketplace that includes preferred provider organizations. Right now, if you get on the ACA, and all of you know this, you're on an HMO. And so the range of control you have over the doctors you see is virtually non-existent. And your waiting list is very high. And if you're in a critical situation, you pretty much have to say you're suicidal to get seen early. Well, in the days of COVID, that's not a lie. But when I was coming up with my ideas, I realized, like Representative Wu said, everything must be paid for. There were bills passed for maternal mortality. So they got the money for opioid addiction, which afflicts mostly, I'm going to be very clear, with postpartum, with post-pregnancy white women. But postpartum disorder is across the racial spectrum. This was Senate Bill 781. Representative Wu probably knows this bill. No money was put in the budget for that. No money was put in the budget to follow women for any length of time to monitor postpartum depression. So that's a bill that doesn't exist. And that's why I said we have to take the money that is currently going to pay the National Guard to go to the border that Texas has nothing to do with. It's totally a waste of funds, and we have to pay for it. We have to treat the budget and our bills the way we treat them at home. Now, I sit down, I look at my bills. How much is it going to cost? Where am I going to get the money? If I can't afford it, I can't afford it. So you may not like this, but I decided if we can't get an across-the-board Medicaid expansion, which I dearly want, and it would cost us 10%, and I think we could scrape up the money, robbing Peter to pay Paul for the most worthy of causes, and we're not going to buy those extra pair of shoes. I think we could truly do that. But if there is not a legislative will, because it takes everybody, not just one person, then we have to expand Medicaid to pregnant women for 18 months after they give birth, because it can take up to 6 months for the blood pressure, opioid addiction, and postpartum depression issues to surface. And then they need a year of follow-up. And we're not currently doing that. We kick them off after 2 months. And I feel incredibly strongly about this because I've had clients who were suicidal, and I've had clients whose family member died from stroke, and the baby was motherless. So that's where I'm putting a ton of energy, and I hope you agree with that. Thank you.
Well, I think we can agree on all of those things. I'm pleased to hear that we've got some ways that we can address what you'll be facing in terms of a budget deficit. So I want to go now just a little bit different way and talk about, as you know, we are in a situation where the issues around what happens with interface with law enforcement is something that everybody is talking about. But in the midst of all of that, of course, we know that there are some issues that relate to systemic racism and like that are a part of it. But one of the areas that we don't talk much about is that interface between mental illness and the criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. And when you look at where we are at this point in terms of where people are treated, all of you know that the Harris County Jail is the largest treatment area, or even it's not a hospital, but it's a jail, becomes the largest treatment facility for the state of Texas. And we're about to get, we know, new beds at HCPC. But it would be really interesting to hear from each of you where you think we need some help and what you know about where we have our diversion focus at this point. So let me just start, and we will start with Ms. Moore first, and then we'll go the other way, okay?
Okay, so we're looking at mental illness and criminal justice interface, and the first thing I thought of was the gentleman in Galveston who they had the ropes around his neck, and they were on his, I almost said military, the police were on their horses. And that was truly, truly horrifying. Now, by the way, just so you know, I did psychiatric evaluations in a county jail back in the day. So I'm a little bit familiar, and I've testified in court as an expert witness on sexual abuse and child abuse. So I know a little bit about this. So what I'm thinking is that they need a department. This isn't about defund the police. It's divert the funds to create a mental health division. And there's already some of that in progress. But I think so I'm going to give you a personal experience. I got a call that a lady was in distress, and I was covering for somebody. And I drove out to see the lady. And I go in and learn that she has been holding a shotgun on me. And if I had made one wrong move, she would have shot me. But fortunately, I didn't make a wrong move and I did not get shot. I was younger. We had a lovely conversation. She made me tea, and I was young enough to know that I was still immortal. And by the time the whole thing was said and done, this, by the way, was a white woman. But by the time the whole thing was said and done, she agreed to go to the hospital. She showed me the blackjack she had under her pillow. The lady was clearly paranoid, and she did agree to go to the hospital, and they came and got her, and they were very kind to her, and off to the hospital she went. I think to myself, what would have happened to that woman if it had been the police? If they had drawn a gun on her, she would have shot one of them. And then she would have been shot in turn, and we would have been reading about a tragedy. Now, I've been practicing long enough to know that that's what it would have looked like. So I firmly believe that there needs to be an interface between a mental health team and the police team, and that they respect each other and they go out gently. But mental health people report to their supervisors and the police report to their supervisors, and there's a whole lot of interface between the two of them. I think that could cut out this kind of evil that is going on. Where I once called, last year I called 911 about a man on a street, on Montrose as a matter of fact. And I said, well, it's a mental health issue. And they kept saying, do you want the police or do you want the fire department? Do you want an ambulance? And I said, no, it's a mental health issue. That's the other thing that needs to be corrected. That, I mean, I almost hung up on them, but it was a mental health issue. But 911 was not equipped to address, oh, okay, we got a mental health issue. So there needs to be training among 911 to be able to identify mental health issues, that this guy didn't need a cop, a police person.
And they're supposed to be, that's supposed to exist, but we obviously need to do more with that. Let me just quickly move on and ask Representative Wu, would you weigh in at this point on the interface there with the criminal justice system and things that you see that we need to do differently?
I've been muted. Sorry, I got muted by the host. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So this is actually something that I'm very familiar with. I know that Ann Johnson also works a lot in this arena. Again, I work in criminal justice. I mostly work with juveniles. Like Ann works with mainly adults. I also do a lot of CPS work. This is both of these systems, CPS, juvenile justice, adult criminal justice, is heavily influenced by mental health issues. And one of the things that we've known for decades is that there is a better way to do things. And especially in the relationship between how we deal with people who are having a mental health crisis. And Sandra's actually right. We, City of Houston and Harris County Sheriff's Office do actually have mental health divisions, and they try to send officers or officers partnered up with mental health experts to try to go diffuse some of these problems. But the problem is there's not enough of them, because a lot of the calls that police get are for mental health issues, and there's not enough of this, not enough cities around the state, around the nation, who are taking this proactive stance. And you know what the legislature can do, what the legislature should be doing.
Let me interrupt just a minute. I've been trying to get them to get you. Oh, you have an issue with your camera. Okay. That's why we can't see you, Representative Wu.
Can you not see me?
No, we can't see you. So
It's working on my side.
I don't know what's happening. Maybe it's on our side. Well, just go on. Go on. We'll catch up at some point.
Okay.
There we
There you are.
Okay. That's very weird. So what I think the legislature should do, what I've been trying to do, what the legislature should be doing is redirecting a lot of these funds. Just as Sandra said, we should be using more funds to try to do preventative action. But what it's going to take to get this change is a change in mindset from our legislators. And that's where your membership comes in. That's where the advocates come in, because we still think about mental health issue, and a lot of people think about it this way as, oh, that's their own fault. That people perceive mental health as that someone who's suffering from mental health, they did something wrong to give themselves mental health issues. And so they deserve whatever comes to them. And this is wrong. And we've known this is wrong for decades and decades, but our society still has this mindset that it's just like a drug addiction. If somebody has it, they must have done something to earn it. They deserve it. And what we're trying to do is push people back and saying, hey, this is the way it actually is. This is the way it actually works. And not just with mental health, but also with drug addiction, and say, like, look, some people are more susceptible to drug addiction. And let's stop worrying about whose fault it is, and let's treat it. And I could talk about this for hours and hours, but I don't think we have that kind of time. Simply, your membership, the people who work in mental health know how to do things better. And I would implore anybody running for office, I don't care if it's state rep or for Congress or running for judge or anything, to listen to those experts and learn more about mental health and how it affects the criminal justice system and how it affects police interactions. I think if everyone understood it better, then we could do a better job.
Well, I think that you've given us a call to arms here, that we as an organization need to be supporting what our legislators are out there doing, and letting them know that we're here and we're watching, and yes, we have an interest. We have a real interest in it. Okay, if I can just move on to Ann Johnson. I'm hoping we'll be able to get you up. We've kind of got some problems with our moving between the screen, but hopefully.
No problem. Thank you so much. And again, this is an incredibly important question that I think most citizens would recognize is frustrating, because just like Representative Wu said, he and I work in the criminal justice system and juvenile justice in the adult court. And of course, Sandra Moore is working directly with this population. And these two worlds have collided. And I think most people, when they find that out, are offended that that is the manner in which we have pushed this population as what is not a community solution. And so you're absolutely right. We don't need law enforcement responding to a mental health crisis in a manner that can escalate the situation. We need trained individuals within our law enforcement community that can respond on those scenes and de-escalate the situation. And we are making progress. There are mental health units in our sheriff and police department. There are alternative courts that are trying to resolve this issue, but these are at a local level, isolated. And so that is the benefit of having this shift in mindset at the state level. And our state legislature, not only to commit that this is going to be our policy going forward on how we treat our citizens throughout the state, but giving that financial commitment. We have a mental health court to try to divert this population out of the criminal justice system so that they are not convicted. But it's limited. There are only so many people who can get admitted into that process, and that is truly a limitation on funds. And so we can absolutely do this in a better way for not only the population, but for the state in general, by backing up our commitment, investing early on in true mental health intervention, and not waiting to the point that people enter our criminal justice system.
And it's interesting because in Houston, we've already done that sequential intercept model, so we know exactly where the holes are. And it's not just been done in Houston, it's been done in all of the large cities have already done their intercept models, but that has not moved out into for anyone to look at. So that may be up to us to do that. Let me just let all of you know that we had a question come in through the chat that in certain places, when the police come out, they say that the person that they won't do anything until the person has committed a crime. They say that either they have to be an imminent threat to themselves or others, or it has to be happening at that point. That's like an imminent threat. That is really not the way the law is written. And my understanding is that the Texas Judicial Commission on Mental Health is expecting that it will not just be police, but that your licensed professional counselors and licensed social workers and other mental health professionals will be able to make a determination. So it's not just left to physicians, but the imminent threat piece that's there is really about what actions you can take. I don't think that that's the totality of what's there. So part of what I'm getting at is that we need to look at how do we fix the law so that in fact you have a person of danger to themselves, a person of danger to others, and someone who is gravely disabled. It is the gravely disabled piece that is missing from our Texas law to allow people to be treated as they have their mental illness treated, as opposed to being waiting until they've done something. So I just wanted to add that that's something that we have. So
Can I add a little something to that?
yeah, sure.
So I think a lot of that, this is going back to the, I have to use an old adage just because if you're a hammer, everything's a nail. Mm-hmm. Police are trained to respond in a very specific kind of way. And when the situation goes beyond that training, then they don't know how to react, or they try to put other types of reactions onto a situation that doesn't call for it. And that's when you get a lot of situations where police respond with too much force, when they actually escalate a situation. I think a lot of times, and I'm a former prosecutor as well, and I think a lot of times when cops say, "Well, there's nothing I can do about it," that's not necessarily true. They just say that so they don't have to deal with the situation at hand because they're not necessarily equipped to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And what I would say to that is that we need to train our police force better. We need to train them sometimes to be able to help de-escalate situations, but sometimes to know when to call someone else in. And they don't have to wait until someone commits a crime. And I don't believe that's actually true, that they need to wait till someone commits a crime. They can react and find other solutions. And the real question is, how do we train our cops? What do we expect from them? And I think this is a wholesale societal demand. It can't just be that NAMI says that you should do something different. It should be like our entire society, from the voters onto the legislators to all the elected officials, say, like, look, we want you to do better. We want you to be better trained. We want you to be better equipped, and to deal with these situations in a different manner. It's not just one spot.
Can I add a comment and a question here?
Sure.
This is Neil. I'm the executive director of NAMI Greater Houston. And what I hear from police is that they would like the training. They are not given the funds to promote the training.
Correct.
So they are getting state mandates with the Sandra Bland Act, but they don't have a way to pay for them. And so we are hamstringing them. I was wondering, as you get back to your question about where the finances are going to come from, because we do have a better than average legislative mandate for training for de-escalation.
Right.
But we don't have the funding.
Yep.
And and it makes the police look bad, badder than they need to look. You know, they're out there. So I just wondered if I could add to the dialogue in that way and receive some thoughts here. Thank you.
I'd like to respond to that if I could, given my background. First of all, I agree with Representative Wu. I gave my example of 911. And so I think this is a case where you could look at joint funding in the same way that is sometimes attempted around flooding. So you could look at funding through the county, the city, and the state. And then I think there has got to be more room before you get to crisis mode for just a welfare check. In the not too distant past, I had to call 911 because COVID is resulting, as you all know, in a lot of deterioration. And I was concerned enough about a client that I felt that the situation of imminent danger had taken place, was occurring. And I called for a welfare check. I could not say that they had a gun because I knew they had got rid of the gun. But I was afraid they were going to suicide out. And so this wasn't a case really where I wanted the police at all. And this is where I think, in terms of what you're saying, there are times where an attached mental health worker is actually the only person who needs to go out.
Right.
And then they need to have access. Now, how do you pay for that? I think you get all three levels of government, and then you start hitting up the feds for a grant to make this happen. Now, yes, it's a struggle, and we should have money for this, but we don't. This state just voted against an income tax. I've been advocating an increase in the franchise tax. People look at me as if I've grown 3 extra heads. So, and as a small business owner, that would impact me directly. So I think these are some things that could be done now. All 4 levels interfacing. But you don't need the police at everything. And I'm not bad-mouthing the police because honestly, I had a contract where I worked with the police and the vast majority were really decent people who didn't know what to do.
Right, and that's one of those areas where we really need to look for the funding. And given the funding situation we're in now, it's going to be critical that we have other revenue streams. So let me ask, Ms. Johnson, is there anything that you want to add to this before we're going to get ready to wrap up? But I had one last time, if there's anything else that you wanted to add before I ask the final question.
No, I absolutely agree that we are recognizing among this group that we have to shift the old method of allowing our criminal justice system to be the manner in which oftentimes we are addressing mental health issues. That's not the right way to do it. And so everybody on this call is absolutely correct that we have to decide where our budget commitment will be in the state. And are we going to commit to the most vulnerable among us? And I believe that we should. And that does mean a commitment out of Austin to find those funds to be able to implement these proper policies. You all have mentioned this. We can no longer accept unfunded mandates from Austin pushing down to the county level to again absorb budgets that are not there. We have to make this shift in a commitment, and it means choosing to invest in our most vulnerable in our community and having that mindset. And I believe everybody on this call is committed to doing so and finding the solutions to move forward in a more appropriate manner.
I think the one area that we would add, and as you kind of start thinking about your closing, there are a couple of things. One is it would be really good if you looked at our policy, if there are any things that you think, we did send you our policy platform. And so please give it a look, see, and if you feel like you really would support the areas that are on that, but please let us know, because we would love to have you be a part of that with us. The other thing is that, of course, we talked about the deep end issues as they relate to treatment of mental illness, but we haven't talked about what do you do to keep people from getting to that point, which includes, and it was very nice, I believe, Ms. Johnson, you were the one in your response to NAMI Texas, talked about wraparound services, talked about the need. So that idea of having a multiplicity of options to ensure that people get to the right place to keep them safe is something that I think our families have talked about. And so I'm hoping that each of you will kind of look at that concept in your closing, that what are the other things, if there are things that you think in addition we need to ensure that we don't always end up at the deep end in the hospital or in the jail, but what can we do in the community? What kinds of things can we do in the community? As well as in your closing, if you just kind of tell us what you have kind of learned from tonight and things that you think we need to know and we need to do. So we are gonna flip around and I will start with Ms. Moore first, and then we'll go back the other way through Ms. Johnson and then to Jean Wu. So Ms. Moore, if you want to start out and give us your ideas on that, as well as making your closing statement for us and to us, that would be really great.
Well, I did read your statement, and of course it's an informed statement. And as a licensed professional counselor, there wasn't anything I could disagree with. And so I thought it was quite excellent. I have to speak generally here. I'd like to speak specifically, but there's a real problem. And that is we don't have enough psychiatrists. And then we don't have enough psychiatrists who are Black or who are members of the Latino community. And truthfully, I think, and we don't have enough mental health workers who are members of the Black and Latino community. And so I think the state has to look at education, medical school, graduate school, and come up with grants, because we're in a time where people who aren't white would like to see people who aren't white and might understand their experience, and that would help them in terms of trust. Okay. Then I think we as legislators, which I hope to be, have to encourage medical schools to start promoting family health care, because they only glorify surgeons and they look down on primary health care, they look down on family practitioners, and they look down on psychiatrists. Because these are the three fields that make the least money. And then fourth, they look down on OB-GYNs. And I think the state has to really promote this with the medical schools and get them to move off that elitist position. And I know there are so many of you who know exactly what I'm talking about. That's a little more generic and not specific, but you know, it's what we have to go for.
Exactly.
That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you so much for that. Okay, Ms. Johnson, if you'll give us just a minute or so there to kind of wrap up and close out.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I really am honored to be on this panel. I'm grateful to be with all of you that are working and committed to this field. I'm glad to see Sandra Moore and myself who are trying to be candidates. And then, of course, Representative Wu, who's been in this fight for more than a decade. And so I know what he's been fighting in Austin, and he's been fighting for the things that we're talking about, like Medicaid expansion. This is a fundamental shift that needs to be made in Austin. And just as you mentioned, I am a member of not only having been a member of the American Leadership Forum around criminal justice, but also I'm on our Texas Children's Justice Act Task Force. And what we do in these groups is bring together different segments of our population to break down the silos. And that's exactly the kind of commitment that we need out of Austin, to bring these wraparound services to ensuring that we are addressing some of the things that you are talking about in your platform. Recognizing that it's not just mental health and when someone's in crisis, it's that earlier intervention. It's dealing with the issues of homelessness and ensuring that we have housing. It's dealing not just with Medicaid expansion, but addressing some of the things that you all are talking about resolving some of the billing issues and making things more efficient so that we can start providing this care. And so just as we have talked about, this decade has been a lost decade of public education and health. And to me, that strikes at the very population that we are talking about, the most vulnerable among us. And it is at that youthful age where we have the potential to address the needs of those individuals with mental health issues. And it is absolutely my commitment that we find a way in Austin to making these issues a priority going forward.
Thank you so much. Okay, Representative Wu.
Okay, is my video and sound okay?
I think your sound is definitely okay, but I'm not sure about your video, but that's okay. We can hear you real good.
Okay, we're just gonna go with it. I don't know what's going on with my Zoom. So let me just close with this. Our state's policy struggles with mental health is not just limited to providers, not just limited to therapists, but includes so many other aspects. I think there's so many things that I would like to have talked about. I know we don't have the time for it, but everything from the way we deal with schools and the way they deal with kids to providing preventative care for youth who are in trouble, to dealing with people who have drug addiction issues, and there's just so many different aspects. I mean, I'll give you one quick example. In this past week, actually past month, our office has been fighting with the BHEC to get more social workers licensed. And there's been a huge backlog of social workers that has affected the entire state. And we don't ever think about that. That affects mental health issues as well. That affects care for the most vulnerable populations throughout the state, for children, for adults, for seniors. And I just want everyone to keep that in mind, the fight for better care, the fight for parity, the fight for equality, the fight for a system that doesn't demonize people with mental health issues is not just one thing. It's everything. And it's complicated, it's complex, and I could not be more happy to know that I have two potential colleagues who already know so much and have such an incredible understanding of the way things are, and that they don't have to be educated and they don't have to be sold on this. And I'm thrilled about that. And you know what? I know this is a nonpartisan group, and you know, and mental health really shouldn't be a partisan issue. It should not be a partisan issue. But all three of us here are Democrats, and I know our Republican opponents were all invited.
Yes, everyone was invited.
And unfortunately, they're not here. And I think that shows you a lot about what happens in the legislature. That people pay lip service, people talk a big game, and then nothing. And I want us to change that. One of the things I promised is, if Democrats are in charge in 2021, our top priority will be to expand Medicaid, because we want all Texans to be covered, to have health care, and to be able to receive mental health services before it becomes a problem, before it becomes a criminal justice issue. And that's been my commitment. I know every Democrat that I've talked to has made it their commitment as well. So I hope everyone goes and votes. If you're not registered and you're able to be, I don't know what you're doing. This is the election of our lifetime. Exactly. Get out there, get registered. Early voting starts soon. So don't quit screwing around. All right? Thank you all
right,
so much. And thank you for
so
allowing me
much.
to be here.
Okay, Jane, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you all. This was a great discussion. There are many good ideas that were discussed tonight. The problem is huge, so good ideas are really, really important. We've been in a struggle for a long time. We can't get Texas out of the basement when it comes to per capita budget for mental health. Also, thank you, audience, for being with us. Also want to thank you, thank WellPath, that has been sponsoring Brenda's work on this this forum. She's done a great deal of work, and I want to thank Brenda too for that. Remember that we have one more dialogue tomorrow night. Jessica, could you put up the poster? Thanks, Jessica. So we have an exciting one tomorrow night. We have U.S. House, District 9, District 18, and the Harris County District Attorney. So it should be a wonderful forum tomorrow night. Please come. Also, we wanted to show you our resource page. We have a warm line and a number of resources on our website. Jessica, can you put up the resource page?
We want to thank our tech team that's working behind the scenes here. This has been great.
Our campaign called Masks of Hope for a moment. Jessica is going to be putting more information about it on our website this week. The campaign is called Mask Up for Mental Health, and I think it's you can give us a donation for 4 masks. I don't remember the exact amount. Jessica can tell us. And that's a fundraiser, and you'll get a great mask. You'll get a set of 4 great masks. So,
handcrafted. Handcrafted.
Handcrafted. All right.
Yes, you bet.
So that's coming up, and we're looking forward to tomorrow night also. Again, thank you so much, Sandra and Ann and Jean. I'm so glad that you are fighting for mental health. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye all.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. It was an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. We'll be in touch.
Yep.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, because we can advocate for y'all.
Okay.
Y'all be well now.
All right, we
You
will.
too. You too.